In today's video, I want to go over what the territorial conflicts are in German New Medicine. This is a concept that Dr. Hammer put together, and in the books he likes to go over a lot of the technicalities, but he really doesn't explain it too well from a biological perspective. Like in some of his books, he'll start to explain like the alpha and the wolf pack, does this and that, and the beta does this and that. But it's really you just don't learn it much in like biology class in high school. It's just not common knowledge how males and females behave in the wild on a territory. So the word, they're called the territorial conflicts, and this part of the brain affects our behavior the most. This is where we have the constellations that really, shape our personality and, give us, a lot of our quirks. You know, these conflicts will either make us more masculine or more feminine, depending on our handedness and, how, in what order and what age we experience these conflicts. Again, all of these more fine details are explained in this book and in Dr. Hammer's book, but it's really hard to understand it if you don't understand territorial nature in animals in the wild. So there's a few different terms that I think we should know. Now they're called territorial conflicts, not territory conflicts. And then there's also, there's a male territorial conflicts and female sexual conflicts. Now, there's also another term that's almost not mentioned in that I think should be mentioned more in Dr. Hammer's books is the hierarchy. The hierarchy is what is your rank within the tribe, within the group, within the pack. So one of my favorite books that talks about territorial behavior in animals is the Territorial Imperative by Robert Audrey. It's like a 4-book, has a good audiobook narrator, and it just gives tons and tons and tons of different examples of territorial behavior in animals. So let's look at a pack of monkeys. I don't know what they're called, a troop of monkeys. They live on this territory. And next to them, this is another monkey's territory. This is group A. What's called this group A? This is group B. Group C lives over here. D lives over here. And group E and F. The most habitable land today is occupied by something living. Especially if there's valuable resources, on that land. Every living animal needs a territory to eat, sleep, reproduce, and raise its young. Every living thing. And, maybe you're like, that doesn't apply to me. Well, if in order for the tribe to continue living on, the tribe itself, you need to think of the tribe as almost of its own living unit. It needs a place to sleep, reproduce, raise its young, eat, and get the food. And they need to defend that territory from other people trying to claim it. I know we grow up in fairy tale land in the 21st century, but Mother Nature is cutthroat. I heard somewhere that 300 to I don't know if it was 300 or 3,000 species a day go extinct. Mother Nature and these different species and these different organisms, they're almost like experiments to see who is the best at surviving. So this is the territory. all animals have a deep, strong urge to defend their territory almost to the death, depending on, the circumstances. Because deep down in their subconscious, they know if they get kicked off this territory, they're going to lose the right to reproduce. If you don't have a territory, where are you going to raise your young? You don't have a territory. You're living on the streets. And then if you go then you're going to have to go claim another territory, and then somebody's going to go, hey, I already live here. Get out of here. So in this monkey troop, we have the females. They usually gather towards the middle. And we can call this the nest. The females gather near the middle. And in nature, biologically, the biological role of the female is to reproduce and nurture the young. I know modern wokeism doesn't say that. Women can produce great value for the workplace, but in nature, females primarily reproduce and nurture the young. That's what they do. That's what they're made for. They have, milk making machines, strapped to their chest. Males, on the other hand, the males, their biological purpose is to provide and protect. So, they're on the outside, they'll come to the middle, but they're on the outside of the territory. So, at the front of the territorial conflicts, you have a territorial fear, which will land on the larynx, or it will land on the bronchioles. So, what those organs do is they allow you to yell and yell. So what Robert Audrey, he quotes a bunch of people in his book, but every single day, these monkeys go to the edge of their territory, and these monkeys go to the edge of their territory, and they literally just scream at each other. This is my territory, this is my territory. When you hear birds chirping outside, they're not singing because they're in love. They're only singing. The only male bird that sings is the one and female bird is the one that's defending its territory. It is a way of audibly defending your territory. Hey, get away. Someone's coming towards my lawn to go, hey, don't walk on my lawn. This is my lawn. Or maybe I have a big dog, and every time somebody walks by my yard, the dog goes, woo, 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 woo. And the person's like, oh, I'm not messing with that. I'm not messing with those guys. The larynx and the bronchi are a way to claim your territory, through the person's ears, through sound waves. Or it's a way to scream or yell and get the help of your other tribe mates to come reinforce this territorial invasion. Think of the prairie dog. He's always looking around. And then when he sees something, I don't know what noise they make. They go beep, beep, they're ruff, ruff, or whatever they do. And then they all go under. It's, hey, there's an eagle. Everybody get down. Everybody go underground. So, those top two relays up here are, for the male experience is a territorial fear. And then for the female, it's a scare fright. These two up here. And so for the males, this middle one right here, that those heart programs, this is going to be a territorial loss. So what would a territorial loss be? Let's say the forest gets burned down. They don't have a territory anymore. So the veins are going to, there's cell loss on those veins and arteries to open up to allow more blood flow, to give them more energy to take care of to get a new territory, to reclaim the territory. Maybe, so here's another hierarchy one. So the hierarchy, like in the military, you can only peck down. You can't peck at the top person. And in birds, this is very strict. Like in bird societies, like if you're a chicken, you only peck, one or two below your, like if you're the alpha chicken, you're not pecking the very bottom chicken. You're only pecking, the top two tiers below you. You're not, and then, so they're always, like there's this very fine pecking order. Why is it like this? It's survival of the fit. The higher you are on the hierarchy, the more resources the tribe, the group allows you to have. You get first dibs. And the lower you are in the hierarchy, the less resources you are allowed to take from the territory. And that goes for reproducing. The lower you are on the hierarchy, the less likely you will be to reproduce. You get the last scraps at mealtime. So the word Dr. Hammer uses to describe this, he doesn't call them territory conflicts. He calls them territorial conflicts. And this word includes the hierarchy behavior, territory behavior, defending our territory behavior, and then sexual behavior, reproductive behavior. So the territorial loss, you've lost the territory. You've lost your status. You get kicked out of a group. You get kicked off the hockey team. You lose your job. A kid's territory is his mother. The mother leaves the kid at daycare. The kid doesn't know if the mom's coming back or not. So, a territorial loss. On the flip side, the female experience to that is the female isn't wired. It can, but it isn't wired originally, like out of the box, to be manly and to claim and to defend territory. Their job, biologically, in nature, is to reproduce. To find the best group, or to find the best alpha that has the most resources and the most protection in the nicest territory, and to hang out there, eat the food, and reproduce, and take care of the kids. That is their job. And I know that sounds sexist, but it is, because that's just how it is in nature. In nature, females are always reproducing and always taking this, like for monkeys, it takes like 2 years to raise a monkey baby, where it can, fend for itself within the group. So the mother will raise it for 2 years. And within that 2 years, she won't have another kid. But then the second the kid is a teenager and ready to go off on its own, she's ready to get pregnant again. She goes into heat and, she's, sleeping around trying to get pregnant within with usually, sometimes they switch tribes. It just depends on the circumstances. But in general, this is what's happening now. So that would be a sexual conflict. I for some I for a lot of so monkeys, they are monkeys and apes. They like a sexual what's the big deal? Just go have sex with somebody else. You know? Especially when you don't have any, when you're some sort of an animal and you don't have any morals. Like, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? So monkeys, they have a menstrual cycle of every 30 days, 12 times a year. They are able to get pregnant. Most animals, they only ovulate once a year, or maybe twice. There's that mating season. And if they don't get pregnant during that mating season, and you're only on this earth for 10 years, I mean, that's kind of a big deal for some of these animals. Depends on how long you live. But if you don't mate and get pregnant during that mating season, if you don't find a partner during that mating season, or if your partner leaves you during that mating season, it could be registered as a sexual conflict. Like, I'm kind of trying to help you see, like, things don't always match. Like, some of these conflict themes, like, don't really make sense a lot of the times from, like, a human perspective. But when you start to look at them from, a simpler animal's perspective, you can start to make sense of it a little bit more. So the female was rejected. I'm in Dr. Sasha's class right now, and he says a female's worst emotion or greatest fear is being abandoned. Her biggest biological value she can provide is having a baby and nourishing that baby. Because if the females in the group aren't doing that, it's a matter of time before the tribe dies out, or the species dies out. It's biologically, it's the female's job to have babies and raise and nurture and raise those babies, where it's the male's job to protect and provide for the females and the males in his group and kids in his group. So there's also another group of conflicts here. It's the I only have so many hands. So here, this is a territorial anger or an identity conflict, and this is the gallbladder, stomach, and pancreatic bile ducts. It widens these ducts to allow you to produce, allow more digestive juices to flow, to allow you to digest your meal better, to fight the territorial battle better. And then here is the rectum surface mucosa. Here, it widens your rectum so you can crap on your territory better and mark your territory better. So how do we, so what's a territorial anger? What's an identity conflict? Again, not well defined in Dr. Hammer's books. Dr. Denny did a great job defining an identity conflict in his book. It's only in French. So let's talk about the identity conflict. Dr. Denny likes to define this as I don't know who I am. What does that mean? Don't know who you are. I don't know what my role in the tribe is. What is my role in the tribe? I don't know my role. Am I, a female and reproducing? in our society, like, do I want to be a mom or do I want to have a career? I don't know my role inside my tribe. And if you don't have a role, you're not producing value for the tribe, and you're just dead weight, and the tribe's not going to want you hanging around. What is my role? And in nature, animals can get a lot of information just from sniffing somebody's butt. Weird, but that's what they do. So the flip side of this, so I don't know what my role is. I don't know what that's the female way. I don't know what my role in the tribe. I don't know what to do. I don't who it, am I a baker? Like, think about people's like last names. Am I, Smith? This person was probably a blacksmith. Baker. This person was probably a baker. Miller. This person milled the grains. And so on. So I don't know what my role is. Hey, my dad's a baker and he wants me to be a baker, but you know what? I really like blacksmithing and it's going to break his heart. Now, on the flip side of this is territorial anger. Someone knocked me down on the hierarchy and I'm angry about it. Why am I angry about getting knocked down on the hierarchy? Because deep down in our subconscious programming, it knows that if we get knocked down on the hierarchy, we won't get as many food and resources from the territory that our group controls. We won't have as many good mating options, etc. The higher you are on the hierarchy, the better. I think being the alpha is probably the worst job. the alpha has to deal with the most amount of stress. Like in the monkey tribe, you have the alpha, and the baboons are probably the best species to study because they live like the closest to humans. They are same environment as humans. Like, you have the alpha, and then you have like a group of like 6 betas. This like second rung on the hierarchy right here, they tend to have the best life, if you ask me. They get a lot of resources, they get a lot of privileges, and they get to mate a lot. But the alpha has to deal with a ton of stress. He needs to look after the group. People are always trying to, take over his position. I mean, he has a lot of responsibility. So the territorial anger, I mean, I don't know if it's, I need to check up on this, but I don't know if it's like only pertains to anger inside the territory. So, territorial anger is that I'm only angry at the people in my territory, or does it apply to people outside the territory, other tribes trying to invade my territory as well? I'm not sure. But territorial anger, your role. Maybe somebody's getting in the way of your role. Somebody's messing with your hierarchy. Someone's, blocking your ability to maintain the territory. Territorial. There's a video, or lots of videos, online, where there's like 2 dogs and they're at the fence and they're just barking at each other like crazy. And like the person will like open the door, and they'll still like stay on. They still like won't cross that line, and they'll just bark at each other like crazy. The territorial instincts and the territorial rules and behaviors deep inside our subconscious, they're there. They're there, and they govern a huge portion of our life. There's also the territorial marking conflicts, which, to to mark the territory. We do it visually with fences, but humans, yeah, humans do it visually with fences, but most animals, especially dogs and cats, they're marking their territory with their poop and with their pee. And animals have a very strong sense of smell. A deer can smell a hunter from, miles away if it's downwind, if the wind's blowing the right way. So if you're walking, around your territory, whose pee is that? Somebody is in my territory. I must defend my territory. On my territory is my home, my females, my children, my food, where I sleep. This is my territory. I can't surrender this territory because my chances of survival get decimated if I lose my territory. I have so much energy invested in this territory. And if I try to find another territory, like I gotta spend a time. Like, have you ever moved before? Like, moving is like if you just moved like 12, unless you're a nomad, a nomadic species or a nomadic tribe, and you've built your lives around that. But even if you're a nomad, your territory is really the herd that you're following. Because if that herd goes away, or that herd, like think about the Native Americans that hunted the buffalo. The way that the American government, won that war against them, or won the battle, I guess you could say, is they destroyed their territory. They turned the prairie into farmlands, and they killed all the buffalo, so that the Indians, like, their identity, their territory was essentially destroyed. The territory you live on, a lot of the times identifies your culture, produces your culture. That's another discussion. But essentially, what I'm trying to help you guys understand, like from a German New Medicine perspective, is start to look at like the territorial behavior in animals. And the best book that I've seen for that is The Territorial Imperative by Audrey, Robert Audrey. I think Conrad Lawrence did this one study, or this one experiment where he had these fish, right? There was like a school of fish, and they had set the hierarchy. So there was like 5 fish, and they had to hire 1 fish, 2 fish, 3 fish, 4 fish, 5 fish. So they set the hierarchy, right? And they would lower the temperature in the fish tank. So as they lowered the temperature, certain behaviors started to disappear. And, most people would think that like sexual behavior would disappear last, but one of the last behaviors to disappear was the instinct to, protect the territory from other groups of fish and to protect their position in the hierarchy. Watch any movie. It's usually has something to do with, if it's like a woman, it's trying to lock down a man. But in today's, woke movies, it's about a woman trying to find her place in the hierarchy. But it's about a man trying to, show how well he can protect and provide for the group that he's in, and working his way up the hierarchy. And the most emotional parts of that movie are times where he's failed as a protector, or succeeded as a protector, or he's gone up in the hierarchy, or he's gone down in the hierarchy. So, yeah, it's this deep hardwiring inside of us. And, modern psychology, I'm not an expert on like what they squawk about today, but a lot of what like Freud was discovering, he was looking at zoo animals. So he didn't get to see like the full spectrum of like territorial behavior. Sex isn't like a huge deal in nature. Like most animals like only have sex like once a year, it lasts a few minutes. The majority of their behavior is, protecting their territory, protecting themselves, getting food, maintaining their hierarchy position within whatever group of animals they live in. So this is, kind of how, like, when we're trying to find somebody's territorial conflict, we're kind of looking at it through that lens. The males provide and protect biologically from a biological perspective, you know, and then the females, they're called sexual conflicts, and they're concerned with their safety within this tribe. They want a tribe and a territory that is safe so that they can, raise their children, raise their children. Because if it's not, then their children are going to get eaten or they're going to starve. If there are not good male protectors on the territory. And the territory is constantly under attack from other members of the species and, probably other animals and other species as well. So this is kind of, this isn't like a complete biological perspective on what territorial behavior is by any stretch of the means. I'm just trying to push you guys in the right direction because this is something that just kind of goes in and out the other years because there's just so many more complicated little nuances as to what's like happening to the brain and the hormone status when you have these territorial conflicts. And by the time that gets explained, there's nothing in a lot of the German New Medicine texts that, are explaining like, territorial behavior in animals in the wild. So, all right, guys, you haven't already, go watch the first day of my 13-day protocol. If you're still having gut issues, the first day is free. But, yeah, ask questions down below. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.